Welcome to Amir Shakil 5858, the War and Love Report. I am Amir. Good name. A federal grand jury has indicted former President Donald Trump on 4 counts, including conspiracy to defraud the United States and obstruction of an official proceeding. It comes after a more than 9-month investigation by special counsel Jack Smith of Mr. Trump's involvement in the January 6th insurrection and efforts to overturn the 2020 election. This is the third time Mr. Trump has been indicted this year. He was first charged in March in a New York court with 34 counts related to hush money payments made during the 2016 campaign. His first indictment then came in June as part of the special counsel's probe. A Florida grand jury charged him with 37 felonies related to classified material found in his home. Let's hear a discussion between Jeff Bennett, Amna Nawaz, and Laura Barron regarding this indictments. All these correspondents belong to PBS NewsHour.
All of this and joins us here. Laura, good to be here. So, as you mentioned, Jack Smith has been following 2 lines of investigation, this January 6th probe being one of them. Just remind us how we arrived at this moment in this particular probe.
So in November of last year was when the special counsel Jack Smith was named by Attorney General Merrick Garland as being the one who would oversee these 2 probes, the one into the classified documents, the mishandling of those in Mar-a-Lago, and the investigation into the former president's efforts to subvert the 2020 election, to overturn the 2020 election, what he potentially did to obstruct proceedings in Congress, and all of the potential conspirators that he worked with to do that. So since then, the special counsel has his team has interviewed a number of people that could potentially have information about what exactly the president did, what he knew, what he tried to exert, how he tried to exert his influence. Some of those people are his own vice president, Mike Pence, who we know testified to the grand jury. We also know that Brad Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, testified. And we also know that recent reports show that Rudy Giuliani, a former attorney to the president, who was someone that we all heard repeatedly lie about the 2020 election, spoke for 8 hours to federal investigators about this probe. And he's not named in this indictment. As far as we can tell so far, it's a pretty thick indictment, but he is someone that could very well end up facing charges, be it from the Justice Department or be it from Fulton County's district attorney, which is another potential venue where criminal charges are going to come.
Yeah, expected by the end of this month, potentially. Laura, the former president has been posting real-time reaction to this case. In fact, we learned that he received a target letter because he was the one who posted it on his Truth Social platform. What's he saying this evening about all this?
Yes, it was a lengthy statement, Jeff, and it was from his campaign. I want to go to this one first from his campaign because it's just striking the language that his campaign used in response to this news of the indictment. His campaign said that, quote, the lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the former Soviet Union, and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes. It's a stunning statement, especially.
Federal grand juries are made up of approximately 16 to 23 people, and at least 12 jurors must concur in order to issue an indictment. I am thankful to this clip to PBS NewsHour. Russian missiles hit President Zelensky's hometown on Monday as Russia accuses Ukraine of bombing the occupied city of Donetsk. ECOWAS leaders give Niger a week to restore president or face the consequences. Russian missiles hit President Zelensky's hometown on Monday, killing 6 people and wounding 75 others, as Russia accuses Ukraine of bombing occupied city of Donetsk. Russian missiles hit an apartment complex and building in university. Rescuers are still searching for who are trapped under the rubble. This attack came after the Zelensky says that the fighting is coming to the near to the Russian land. Right now, it's not clear that these attacks were in the retaliation of his Mr. Zelensky's statement. And the next vehicles were burned with the dead bodies inside. Russia accuses Ukraine of killing two civilians and wounding others in the bombing of Moscow-controlled city. There is no way to verify the claims of both countries. A recent Ukraine counteroffensive has intensified. Last week, drone attacks on Russia on Moscow and its territory, especially Crimea, have become more frequent. Russia has tightened security in the aftermath of such attacks. Some 800 passengers, mostly Russians, on board a cruise ship are met with protest as their boat arrived in the Georgian Black Sea port of Batumi early on Friday. Hundreds of student members of opposition parties and activists gathered at the port holding signs denouncing Russia war in Ukraine. At least 30 people were arrested. According to agency which runs these cruise ships, announced that it will no longer dock at the Georgian port. Eastern Poland's ancient forests, a traditional destination for the tourist, now bristling with military hardware. Tensions have been ramped up since Russian mercenaries Wagner Group moved into neighboring Belarus. The Ministry of Defense is in addition to the a newly organized military unit in Kolnar. Poland is also reinforcing Grivo and Shemasifa and Cholenbol, while Poland is preparing and arming for any assault from the Wagner Group. The tourists are changing their plans as a precautions. The tourist agencies are saying that the number of tourists have cut to half. The British government has issued licenses for exploration of oil and gas in the Northern Sea, ignoring calls from the environmental agencies and United Nations to stop developing new fossil fuel projects. Britain Prime Minister justified this move and said UK still needs fossil fuel even after it reaches net zero target, and that's better to rely on local production of oil and gas rather than rely on foreign oil and gas. Prime Minister also pointed to the energy crisis due to the Russian war with Ukraine. The new plan also includes a pledge of $20 billion in carbon capture and storage projects. Prime Minister maintains his country is committed to its energy goals. The UK has pledged to reduce its carbon emission by 68% by the end of the decade and reach net zero by 2050. The US Labor Department reports that job openings in June slipped to 9.6 million, the lowest in 2 years, and the number of people who quit their jobs in June also dropped. That's what the Federal Reserve has been watching for as it tries to cool inflation. Dozens of congressional Democrats are petitioning to end expedited screening of asylum seekers in Border Patrol custody. 13 senators and 53 House members said today that asylum candidates are not getting access to legal counsel, as the Biden administration said they would. In a letter, the lawmakers said, quote, affording people fair education is particularly key for individuals fleeing the threatening harm or torture. Niger is still in turmoil. France, Italy, and Spain moved today to start evacuating their citizens from Niger after last week's military coup. Hundreds of European nationals lined up outside the capital's main airport and waited for hours. So far, American government has not asked Americans to leave the Niger. The Prime Minister in Niger's ousted government warned the country's military that Islamist rebels now have an opening. According to former Prime Minister, current conditions could encourage jihadists because if the armed forces are preoccupied with issues other than ensuring the country's security, obviously you can understand that this will allow the Muslim rebels to be able to make advances on the ground. He called for outside powers to overthrow the military regime. Niger's neighbors Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea declared their support for the military regime. They rejected outright any outside intervention. North Korea is responding to inquiries about Travis King, the US soldier who had been facing military discipline when he escaped into North Korea last month. A Pentagon spokesperson says North Korea communicated with the UN command, but he offered no details. The soldier Travis King was in civilian clothes when he joined a tour group, then dashed across the demilitarized zone. He hasn't been seen since. In the Russia-Ukraine war, a drone attack a skyscraper in central Moscow for the second time in about 48 hours. The building houses Russian government ministries and suffered damage to its glass facade. Ukraine would not confirm or deny involvement, but some in Moscow said it's time to end the fighting. A Moscow resident, frustrated, said that how long this tit-for-tat will go on. Resident says that the war should end now. It's too much now. In 1 year war, nobody has succeeded. Civilians are dying, so there should be an end to this. Russian drones attacked Kharkiv overnight, damaging buildings. Russian also shelled the port city of Kherson, damaging a medical facility and killing a doctor. Michigan authorities have accused two prominent supporters of former President of Donald Trump of accessing and tampering with voting machines after the 2020 election. One is a lawyer who ran unsuccessfully for state's attorney general last year. The two men were arraigned today on criminal charges. The sudden death of Democratic Lieutenant Governor Sheila of New Jersey has shaken the New Jersey today. She had been hospitalized yesterday with an undisclosed ailment. In 2017, Oliver became the first black woman elected to state's-wide office as Governor Phil Murphy's running mate. They were re-elected in 2021. She had been acting as acting governor this week while Murphy was out of town. Her age was 71. Descendants of Henrietta Lacks have reached a settlement involving decades of medical research using her cells without compensation. The family's lawyers announced the settlement today with Thermo Fisher Scientific. He gave no details. Doctors took tissue from Lack's cervical cancer back in 1951. It was the first human cell line to be cloned and added countless innovations. Her story became the basis for a book and a movie. Ongoing rally on Wall Street paused after a mixed set of earnings reports. The Dow Jones Industrial gained 71 points and Nasdaq fell 62 points. S&P 500 lost 12 points. In the Women's World Cup, the US is moving on to the round of 16, but just barely. The American team played to a scoreless draw with Portugal today in a game the defending champions had been expected to win. It's not yet certain which team the US women will play next. An executive order signed by President Biden last week makes the largest changes to the military justice system since the creation in the 1950s. It transfers authority over certain offenses from commanders to a new team of independent prosecutors called the Special Trial Counsel. Those prosecutors, not commanders, will now decide whether to bring charges in cases of sexual assault, rape, murder, manslaughter, domestic violence, stalking, kidnapping, child pornography. Some military legal experts call the changes a movement in the right direction, but see room for improvement. According to John Kirby, a retired admiral, these changes are excellent. The makers and distributors of opioid painkillers have begun to pay out more than $50 billion to state and local governments across the nation. The world has never been wealthier or more advanced technologically, yet hunger still stalks tens of millions globally. 122 million more people now face hunger than in 2019. And now, nearly 20% of the 1.4 billion people across Africa face hunger. Executive Director of World Food Programme of UN says UN is working hard to decrease the hunger. I am thankful to all news resources for their continuous cooperation. I am also thankful to the viewers for their privilege of time. Have a good night.